Hello, it's Martin in my VW ID.3, and in this video I want to talk a little bit about the software, because it's one of those things which VW is not well known for. Well, they are well known for the software not being good, but on the other hand, many car reviewers gloss over it, whereas I have been actually living with the car for a few months now. However, just like most people, I've been using the Apple CarPlay from my phone instead of relying entirely on the built-in navigation system. Just before we start, it's important to mention the software version of this vehicle, which is 3.1. So technically speaking, not the latest one, but this is what most likely the majority of the UK fleet of ID vehicles will be on, because this applies across the ID.4, Skoda Enyaq, Cupra Born, etc. Enough talking, let's get connected up, because there are multiple options. In the ID.3, all USB ports are USB-C, which I quite like. It's a modern car, it's the way it should be, it's the way forward, especially if you keep it for the next decade. It will be compatible with all the devices you have going forward. There are 4 ports in total, 2 in the back, which are power only. So if you have kids in the back and they want to charge their devices, they've got the option to do so, but you cannot stream any data, like for example music, to the head unit from those. Whereas here in the front, in the central console, behind this shutter door, you've got 2 more USB ports, and as you can see, these are labeled as proper USB data ports as well. So that's what I will actually plug my phone into. And yes, I have been exclusively using the wired connection. You can also connect wirelessly with the same functionality, but with me doing lots of filming, if the car connects to CarPlay while I'm recording a video, it just freaks out. But also, generally speaking, I prefer to have the phone connected using the cable, because with wireless CarPlay there is lots of heat problems which can accumulate quite quickly. Think about it this way. With wireless CarPlay, the casting of the phone screen onto the head unit infotainment display happens over Wi-Fi. So you're basically constantly sending like a 1080p video signal over Wi-Fi. On top of that, chances are that the reason why you're connected to CarPlay is because you want to navigate somewhere, so you are using mapping with high precision location as well. And while you are using both of those things, which require quite a bit of power and build up heat, well, you will probably want to keep your phone topped up while you are driving. So you will put it onto the wireless charger. And in this family trim there indeed is a wireless charger. Right here, it's this pocket. I suppose the idea was fantastic. It was that you could have your phone in here while you're having your wallet on top, and it won't scratch the screen of the phone. But it literally creates this tiny little oven which overheats the phone. At least with my experience, it does overheat my iPhone 15 Pro. It just could be because of the case I have with the MagSafe magnets, but you know, it's the official Apple layout. This shouldn't cause any trouble. With the phone connected, you may think CarPlay is CarPlay, there's not much to it, but Apple has been releasing lots of little features to interlink the vehicle with the phone over the years. But at the end of the day, it is up to the car manufacturers to integrate these software features. So let's jump right into CarPlay. As you can see, the default navigation app is Apple Maps for me, and I use it on a daily basis and quite like it. But don't you worry, I will cover all the options because the integration differs slightly app from app. First of all the steering wheel buttons work properly as you would expect them to. So for example, if I go into Spotify, and play whatever song, I just need to make sure that the audio is lowered to not get a copyright strike on this video. But if I simply press the skip button, you skip through the songs like you would expect to. Likewise, you can go back. All works very nicely. If you go to 0 volume, the music automatically pauses, or likewise you can use the on-off button for the screen just by single pressing. That's what pauses and resumes the music. So that all works like you would expect it to. But let's jump back into Maps and let's start the navigation to home, for example, because what actually prompted me to make this video is that these ID products, they have this bar below the screen which has attracted a lot of criticism with the touch sensitive controls, but there are also some proximity sensors embedded into it. So if you move your hand close to the screen, some additional control elements in the UI pop up. And this is the kind of feature you would only expect to work with the built-in system, but it also works within Apple Maps in CarPlay. So for example, now you see that you just get a very clear map with your turn-by-turn instructions, but the moment I bring my finger closer, I get the additional buttons for choosing the scale of the map and adjusting the navigation voice options. And after about 10-15 seconds the system times out and goes back to the clean view. This is very elegantly done, and it just shows that VW has actually taken the proper care to integrate all of the available features. I didn't even know this was an option. Speaking of the infamous touch bar, obviously it controls the temperature and that can be accessed directly by touch, but if you, for example, want to go into the additional climate settings, you need to go into a dedicated on-screen menu. However, despite having a climate shortcut, you can still do it from the screen even with CarPlay running. The CarPlay obviously occupies the majority of the screen. You can simply press this climate zone here and you can then customize how you want your climate to behave, and the moment you press X, the view goes back to CarPlay. Likewise, it can be a little bit confusing at first because you essentially have two home buttons here, but it's very easy to mix and match which system you use for what. So for example, if you want to use the built-in radio but still want to use Apple Maps or Waze for navigation, you can very quickly jump between the media in the built-in system and then go back to your Apple CarPlay. And in fact, as you have seen, if I go into my widgets view on the home screen, the media information correctly transfers over from CarPlay, and you can set up your widgets in whichever size you like. And you can also have a permanent phone mirroring shortcut. So in my case, obviously because I have an iPhone connected, it goes into the CarPlay view. When it comes to voice control, it's the usual system. Single short press of the voice command button brings the VW voice command, which can be a little bit finicky, but it can get the basics done within the vehicle. And again, it can control, for example, the air conditioning if you don't want to take your eyes off the road while driving. Or you can press and hold, and then you get your phone's voice control, like, for example, Siri. Obviously, on top of the buttons, you can also use the wake up hot word. So in my case, hey Siri, what's the weather like outside?
It's currently clear and 23 degrees. Temperatures are heading down from 23 to 17 degrees tonight.
And you will see I didn't need to press any buttons, and even if you have your phone stowed away in a cubby, from my testing it works quite well. So I suspect it's actually using the built-in mic to pick up that hot word, like it should do. I will be honest though, it's not without its problems. While CarPlay is nice and responsive once it's fully loaded up and connected, to get it to actually load up can take quite a while, especially after the vehicle has been in deep sleep. You unlock and you jump right in. It's literally sometimes a solid half a minute for the system to boot up and recognize the phone, even if you have it plugged in using the wired connection. There is no going around this. This is where VW cheaped out, and they have been rightfully criticized. They should have just put a more powerful processor into the head unit and most of these issues would have been resolved. However, they have listened to user feedback and they tried their best. So now the car is quite clever in a sense that the moment you unlock the vehicle, even though it only shows like a lock screen with a clock, behind the scenes the system is already booting up. So if you are putting children in the back or some luggage into the boot, by the time you actually get the driver's seat and jump in, the moment you connect to your phone, CarPlay is instantly available. It's just a little bit annoying if you're like me with not the best timekeeping skills, and in the morning when you're rushing to work and you're trying to see which route is the best based on traffic conditions, it takes extra time for it to boot up. And secondly, while I praise the implementation of all the vehicle features into the CarPlay interface, the one thing which somehow hasn't made its way through is the EV route planning. You may be saying, hold on a second, this is not possible with CarPlay, but it is. And in fact, it's VW's own brand, Porsche, which can do it on the Taycan within Apple Maps. So just like with the built-in system, if you put a destination too far away from your current location, the car will automatically realize and communicate with Apple Maps that there is not enough charge in the battery to make it to the destination, and it will plan charging stops accordingly. So it just seems a bit strange that VW Group seems to have taken the effort to actually program this, but not carry it over to the rest of their fleet. However, that's enough theory. Let's actually see what it works like in practice. And yes, I'm taking you first right into a tunnel, and in fact a very congested Rotherhithe tunnel. The reason being, if you watch the location, Normally what would happen is as you enter the tunnel, the phone may guess how fast you're going, and then it will assume as you lose the GPS signal, that's the speed you will carry on driving. But obviously that doesn't really work in these stop and go traffic situations. Whereas here with the ID.3, I believe the car provides the location data, which is corrected or supplemented using its various other sensors. So we are talking wheel position sensors, the onboard accelerometer, gyroscope, etc. That technique is called dead reckoning, and basically it can guesstimate where it got to based on its last known GPS position and what speed you're doing, etc. So if you look at the map, you will see that that is pretty bang on accurate. And even if we come to a complete stop, the location will stop. And because it's the car doing the processing and just passing on the corrected location data, this works across all apps. So even if I, for example, go into something like Google Maps, despite having opened it after we entered the tunnel, obviously you see we do not have all of the map loaded up because we are in an area with poor signal, the location is consistent. Nice Lotus Electra. But going back to Apple Maps, because that's where I've got the route going, you may be wondering what's the point other than being nice to see where you're exactly located. Well, if you're in an unknown city and you need to take a junction off in a tunnel, obviously the voice announcements will be done at the correct time. And likewise in London we have quite a few speed cameras in tunnels, so you will be alerted of those as well. Just nice to see to have a compromise-free experience using CarPlay compared to the built-in navigation system. And yes, for those of you who are curious, I'm using adaptive cruise control even at 20 miles per hour. It's a lovely feature in traffic like this. In fact, I've done an in-depth video about the adaptive cruise control in the ID.3, so I will leave that linked in the top right-hand corner. And if you've been watching closely, you may have noticed that CarPlay is not limited to the middle infotainment system, but I'm also getting some of the mapping directions right here in the instrument cluster. I can even enlarge the view just like with the stock sat-nav system, and I get the full name of the streets where I need to turn. This is properly done. However, a little bit of bad news here. Unlike the GPS data, which works system-wide, this is only compatible with Apple Maps, at least for now. So, for example, if I switch to Google Maps, you see that in the instrument cluster it appears as if the route guidance was not active, even though I can see my turn-by-turn directions in the middle here. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but I believe this is down to Google and other third-party developers to integrate the functionality, and it's the same situation for Waze, I'm afraid. But to recap, the high precision position updated based on the vehicle data works across all apps, but the arrow view in the instrument cluster is limited to Apple Maps, at least for now, and obviously this may differ on Android if you're using Android Automotive. By the way, if you don't see the arrows at all or nothing to do with the navigation system, you just need to swipe across the view field on the steering wheel, because the right tile of the display can be customized between energy consumption or your navigation instructions. As you could probably tell, this is the ID.3 in the family trim, which means it doesn't have the head-up display. But if you had one of the higher level ID.3s, which does come with a head-up display, or a Cupra Born or Skoda Enyaq, the aero information is also displayed in there. With a caveat, it's displayed in the bottom section of the heads-up display, which mirrors the instrument cluster, but the augmented reality arrows only work with the built-in sat-nav system. And I think that's about it. There's only so many things we can talk about when it comes to CarPlay, but I hope I covered all the points you wanted to know if you are in the market for any of these MEB products. If you found the video useful, definitely give it a thumbs up. Check out the other ID.3 videos on the channel, and subscribe if you want to see more review content. Thank you again, and see you in the next one.